In July 1945, a flash of light in the New Mexico desert briefly turned night into day. Observers miles away felt heat on their faces. A column of fire rose into the sky. Seconds later, a powerful shockwave rolled across the desert. In that moment, a weapon unlike anything in human history had been created: the atomic bomb. Yet the explosion was only the visible end of a much deeper story. For 3 years before that moment, the United States had been running one of the most secret operations ever organized. Entire cities had been built in remote locations. Tens of thousands of workers were sworn to silence. Scientists from across the world were brought together to solve problems that had never been attempted before. Most of the people involved did not even know what they were building. They were told only that their work was critical to winning the war. Behind locked laboratories and guarded fences, engineers and physicists were trying to answer one frightening question. Could the energy inside the atom be turned into a weapon powerful enough to destroy a city? The project that attempted to answer that question became known as the Manhattan Project, and the secrets behind it would shape the modern world. The story begins in Europe before the war. In 1938, scientists in Germany made a discovery that changed physics forever. Researchers studying uranium found that when its atoms were bombarded with neutrons, the nucleus could split into smaller parts. This process released enormous amounts of energy. The phenomenon became known as nuclear fission. The discovery quickly spread through the international scientific community. Physicists realized that if enough atoms split at once, the energy released could be explosive. The key idea was a chain reaction. When one atom split, it released neutrons that could split other atoms. If this process continued rapidly, the energy could grow exponentially in a fraction of a second. Under the right conditions, a massive explosion might occur. Many scientists immediately understood the implications. If nuclear fission could be controlled, it might provide a new source of energy. If it could be weaponized, it might create the most powerful bomb ever imagined. At the time Europe was moving toward war, Nazi Germany had already annexed Austria and was threatening the rest of the continent. Several physicists who had fled Europe feared that Germany might attempt to build such a weapon. One of them was physicist Leo Szilard. Szilard believed the United States government needed to be warned. With the help of physicist Albert Einstein, he helped draft a letter to the American president, Franklin D. Roosevelt. The letter warned that Germany might be working on atomic weapons and urged the United States to begin research immediately. Roosevelt took the warning seriously. What began as a small research effort soon expanded into something far larger. By 1942, the United States was fully involved in World War II. Military leaders realized that if an atomic bomb were possible, it had to be developed before Germany could build one. The U.S. Army took control of the program and created a new organization to manage it. This effort became known as the Manhattan Project. Despite the name, the work quickly spread across several secret locations. One of the most important sites was Los Alamos Laboratory, located in a remote area of northern New Mexico. Los Alamos became the central laboratory for bomb design. The scientific director was physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer had an unusual ability to bring together experts from different fields and coordinate their work. Under his leadership, Los Alamos gathered some of the most talented scientists of the era. Many of them had fled Europe during the rise of fascism. Others were American researchers recruited from universities. They arrived in the desert to work on a project that was both scientifically fascinating and morally unsettling. Their goal was clear: design the world's first atomic bomb. Before a bomb could be built, scientists needed to obtain suitable nuclear material. Two elements could be used: uranium-235 and plutonium-239. Both materials could support a rapid chain reaction, but both were extremely difficult to produce. Natural uranium contains mostly uranium-238, which cannot easily sustain the reaction needed for a bomb. Only a tiny fraction of uranium ore contains uranium-235. Separating that small amount from the rest required an enormous industrial effort. To solve this problem, the Manhattan Project built a massive facility at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Here, several different technologies were used to separate uranium isotopes. These methods included electromagnetic separation, gaseous diffusion, and thermal diffusion. Each process required huge buildings filled with complex machinery. The plants consumed enormous amounts of electricity. At the time, Oak Ridge used more electrical power than many major cities. Meanwhile, another facility was constructed at Hanford site. At Hanford, engineers built some of the first large nuclear reactors ever created. These reactors produced plutonium by exposing uranium to intense neutron radiation inside the reactor core. The plutonium was then chemically extracted from the reactor fuel. This process created the second type of material needed for atomic bombs. By 1944, the Manhattan Project had successfully produced both uranium-235 and plutonium-239. The next challenge was designing a weapon that could use them. Scientists eventually developed two different bomb designs. The uranium bomb used a relatively simple method called a gun-type assembly. In this design, two pieces of uranium were fired together inside the bomb. When they combined, they formed a critical mass capable of sustaining a chain reaction. The design was considered reliable enough that it was never tested before being used in combat. The plutonium bomb required a completely different approach. Plutonium behaved differently during nuclear reactions and could not be used in the same gun-type system. Instead, scientists developed an implosion design. In this system, high explosives were arranged around a sphere of plutonium. When detonated, the explosives compressed the plutonium inward with extreme precision. If the compression was symmetrical, the density of the plutonium would increase enough to trigger a nuclear chain reaction. Designing this implosion system was extremely difficult. The explosives had to detonate at exactly the same moment and produce a perfectly balanced inward force. Even tiny errors could cause the device to fail. To confirm that the design would work, scientists decided to conduct a full-scale test. The first atomic bomb test was conducted in July 1945 at a remote desert location in New Mexico. The test was given the code name Trinity Test. A tower was constructed to hold the plutonium device above the ground. Instruments and cameras were placed around the site to record the results. Scientists and military observers waited miles away. Some worried that the explosion might be far larger than expected. Others wondered whether the bomb would fail completely. At 5:29 in the morning, the device detonated. The explosion produced a blinding flash, followed by a rapidly expanding fireball. Temperatures at the center briefly reached levels hotter than the surface of the sun. A mushroom cloud rose more than 10 kilometers into the sky. The test confirmed that the plutonium implosion design worked. Humanity had entered the nuclear age. Just weeks after the Trinity test, the war in Europe had already ended. Nazi Germany had surrendered in May 1945, but the war in the Pacific continued. Japanese forces were still fighting fiercely across islands in the Pacific Ocean. Military planners expected that invading Japan itself could result in enormous casualties on both sides. The decision about the atomic bomb rested with the American President Harry S. Truman. After reviewing military advice and the results of the Trinity test, Truman approved the use of the weapon against Japan. On August 6, 1945, an American bomber dropped a uranium atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. The explosion destroyed large sections of the city and caused immense loss of life. 3 days later, a plutonium bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Shortly afterward, Japan announced its surrender. World War II came to an end. For many years, it appeared that the United States had developed the atomic bomb entirely in secret. But after the war, investigators discovered that Soviet intelligence had successfully penetrated the Manhattan Project. Several spies had passed important technical information to the Soviet Union. One of the most significant cases involves physicist Klaus Fuchs. Fuchs worked at Los Alamos and had access to detailed information about bomb design. He secretly provided that information to Soviet agents during the war. These intelligence leaks helped accelerate the Soviet atomic program. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first nuclear bomb. The nuclear monopoly of the United States lasted only 4 years. The Manhattan Project employed more than 130,000 people and cost billions of dollars. Yet many of those workers did not know what they were building until after the war ended. Entire towns such as Oak Ridge and Los Alamos existed under strict secrecy. Mail was monitored. Security patrols guarded the facilities. Workers were instructed not to discuss their jobs, even with family members. Despite the secrecy, the project succeeded in solving one of the most complex engineering challenges ever attempted. It combined physics, chemistry, engineering, metallurgy, and industrial production on an unprecedented scale. The result was a weapon capable of altering global politics for decades. The Manhattan Project was more than a wartime experiment. It was a turning point in human history. For the first time, humanity had unlocked the energy inside the atom and turned it into a weapon capable of destroying entire cities. The project helped end World War II, but it also created a new kind of global tension.